Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the Corporate Performance and Budget Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Will Adams and I'm Chair of the committee. We have committee members in the Civic Centre along with officer support. The meeting is being live streamed via YouTube and will be available on the Council's website. Some housekeeping for those in the Civic Centre. No fire drills are planned, and if the alarm does go off, please leave by the emergency exits at the back of the room and congregate on the car park. Can I also please ask you to turn mobile phones off and switch your microphones off when not speaking, please. For those joining on Microsoft Teams, please remain muted and indicate at the appropriate time when you would like to speak, and I will bring you in. Now we will move on to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Chair, we've got apologies from Councillor David Howarth and he's being substituted by Councillor Ange Turner.
Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Turner. Item 2, declarations of interest. Councillor Green first.
Thanks, Chairman. Good evening, colleagues. Can I declare a personal interest only on item 6? The reason I do so is I'm a cabinet member at the County Council and some of the grants are dealt with by the county or passported through or we work in partnership, etc. So it's a personal interest only and purely for reasons of transparency. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare an interest in item 5, assets and asset management, as is declared in my council declarations of interest. I have a contract to provide bar services for South Ribble functions, the function room. Plus, I am also have a lease at a property in South Ribble from South Ribble Borough Council. But none of the questions I'll ask are related to any personal items whatsoever.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Moving on to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 11th September. Members are asked to agree the minutes of the last meeting, please. Do we agree with those? Any comments? I agree with them. Thank you. Item 4, scrutiny recommendations update. Members are asked to accept the update and remove those items that are accepted and complete. Yep, happy to do that. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, assets and asset management. Can I welcome the Deputy Leader of the Council and Cabinet Member for Property, Assets and Commercial Services and Major Developments, Councillor Aniela Bielinski-Gelder, who will present this report, supported by our Interim Deputy Chief Executive, Kim Rennie, who I believe it's your first scrutiny meeting, so welcome to scrutiny. Can I ask you please to provide a brief introduction to this? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be as brief as I can, but there's quite a lot to cover here. So thank you for inviting me to scrutiny on assets and asset management. There's been a lot of change in the commercial service function since May, with new staff after a significant period of interim staff. Assets and asset management now sit under Property and Planning Department, where we will soon be welcoming a new director. This department is now responsible for property management, including agreeing new leases, managing current leases and tenancies, asset valuations, property maintenance, statutory compliance and land use planning. I have asked the team to optimise the property usage, increase revenue generation and use our assets to contribute to the overall well-being of the community by responsibly managing our public properties and land. In terms of property management, the facilities management team are responsible for contract liaison, market tenancies, general repairs, cleaning conference and meeting room setup, bookings and revenue management of in-house amenities and car parks. The team are also working towards providing quality services to customers. The council estate, in summary, constitutes 122 commercial assets, 35 residential assets, Leyland Market, the Civic Centre, 5 leisure centres, the museum, 2 depots and 100 other miscellaneous assets such as allotments, pigeon lofts, garages, cricket clubs, car parks and bowling greens. Additionally, the team are also responsible for supporting the delivery of some large projects, the Town Deal, Leyland Town Deal, Penwith and Master Plan and Jubilee Gardens Extra Care Scheme, as well as maintaining and looking after the Civic Centre. I'd like to take a moment to mention the audit report, which is highlighted in this report, and a number of areas of improvement which were identified, including, firstly, the management and monitoring of leases and licences, second, the management of utilities, and third, the management of asset register and utility records. All of these items raised in the audit have since been looked at in great detail, and work is well underway to improve all areas. And I'll cover that a little bit. In addition, in late 2021, a condition survey of the council's estate was taken, and the team are currently on with establishing a 5-year planned maintenance programme to cover the repairs, replacement and preventative maintenance costs, ultimately ensuring that our assets remain efficient, cost effective and prolonging their useful life, enhancing safety and maintaining their value. This plan will be part of the 2024-25 budget. In terms of utilities, which was an issue on the audit, I recently took an extremely detailed report to Cabinet to improve the management and cost of our utilities. As the report says, there's currently over 100 individual supplies managed by the team. This takes up an extraordinary amount of time and resources to manage. We've therefore approved the procurement of a managed utility supply contract where all 100 core supplies over our 30 sites are monitored and managed by a professional utility service provider. This also ties in with our green agenda for the council to track and record the necessary data for carbon reporting purposes and track the effectiveness of all projects over a longer period of time. Finally, on utilities, this gives us a power purchase agreement, allowing us to benefit from economies of scale. In terms of the issues raised in the audit report on leases and asset management, we've recently procured a property management system, which was previously called TechForge and is now Civica Property Management. The aim of the software is to act as a repository for all property and asset information for South Ribble Borough Council. Populating this new system will take approximately 18 months, as it's anticipated that there'll be over 2,000 individual records of data to capture and upload. Some of this data is down to the granular level, so examples of the data include addresses, mapping references for provenance, UPRNs, build and structural material of the building, amenities, on-site drainage, available utilities and parking provisions, as well as, in some cases, the precise internal and external measurements of every asset and subcategory of asset. So you can imagine that that is going to take some time. I've asked to be briefed on this project moving forward and also to ensure we're collating the best practice version of information that capture for the purposes that we require it. We don't want to have to do this exercise again just for 1 or 2 bits of information, because it's very costly and time consuming. And finally, in terms of the leases, this report also provides an update. The current occupancy rate across the council's property portfolio is currently 93.3%. The estates team proactively market any vacant premises through LoopNet, an online commercial property marketing platform. And we're also lucky enough to have a waiting list and keep a register of interest from interested parties. So any properties that do come up aren't vacant for long. The property team now sits in a shared service element of the council services. And I can say today the department is fully staffed. So where leases renewals have previously lapsed, we can now keep on top of these. Notice has been served on 75% of properties where the rent review is or was due, with a further 7% awaiting trigger dates between now and the end of 2023. Negotiations are now live on 10% of the properties, and once complete, there's likely to be a significant uplift in the revenue for the council. And I'm more than happy to bring an update report in 6 months on all of the above. In terms of the progress, you can see from the report we now have a short, medium and long-term plans in place, all supporting our strategic objectives on corporate priorities in relation to our growing borough, supporting our communities, and promoting investment in South Ribble. And I'd like to say, first of all, thank you to Kristen at the Chief Executive and Adam Nixon, who's been the Head of Property and Development and who's progressed most of this work and will do moving forwards. And finally, thank you for giving me the opportunity to update Scrutiny. The team and I are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that. And can I note as well about the quality of the report? I thought it was very good, very clear. So thank you to the officers for putting that together. Moving straight into the questions then, please. I will start on page 20, paragraph 9, when we're talking about a vision of the service. Reference is being made to developing Leyland Town Centre with the town deal. But I'd like to know also what's being done with regards to Pemberton and our other centres within the borough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, we are currently developing a master plan for that area. But I'm going to ask Mr. Nixon, who's on the call, if he would give some detail, please.
Yes, no problem. Can you hear it? Is that okay?
Would you like to come in?
Yeah, apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, you can. Just an update on Penwith Master Plan. Since I come into the team, so with myself and the economic development team have prepared a tender and gone out to procurement for a lead design consultant to take the Penwith Master Plan design from the current stage 2, REBA stage 2 design, up to technical stage 4, which means we'll take it to the construction stage. We've finalised the evaluation of that tender process, so we're now going through the stages to prepare a report to take to Cabinet in December, which will recommend the appointment of a lead consultant and delegate the subsequent procurement exercises to appoint the rest of the design team as well. So this is to take the full master plan of all the 3 areas to construction stage. This isn't to go out to some of the market for a contractor as yet, but it will take the design forward to where it needs to be.
Thank you for that. Do you want to come in, Councillor Turner?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't catch the gentleman's name. Pemberton Town Centre. I thought a contractor had already been secured for REBA Stage 3. Could you confirm the status of REBA Stage 3, please? Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Councillor. It's Adam Nixon. We met probably 2 months ago, maybe. So when we met, it was we were discussing that we were about to go out to procurement for a consultant, lead consultant, to prepare REBA stages 3 and 4. So that's where we currently are. So we've finalised the procurement exercise, undertook the evaluation, and we will be recommending the appointment of a consultant to take the design forward for REBA stage 3 and 4. We are a little bit behind probably what we discussed a couple of months ago with regards to programme, but yeah, nothing has changed. We will be appointed consultant to take forward the design for REBA stage 3 and 4.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Will. Sorry, can you give us a forecast date of when you will contract for REBA Stage 3? Thank you.
I think we have got a question later on in the agenda about this, Councillor Turner. I think if we can go to that at that point, please, if that's okay. Thank you. Bringing you back to page 21 on paragraph 15. Obviously, you mentioned about the condition survey, which was in 2021, and the outcomes be addressed. If it's going to take us 18 months to put the Civica management system in place, how confident are we of the works which are going to be done in a timely manner, and at what point are our assets, could they potentially be in a worse position in 18 months from the 2021 survey, and how are we going to manage that?
Thanks for that. So, I mean, I can start with what I think the answer to that is, but then officers can for the technical detail. So there's 3 different parts to that. The condition survey leads will lead and inform the 5-year programme plan for maintaining properties. The Civica is about leases and managing property tenancies, and the facilities team are responsible day to day for making sure that properties are maintained and things like that. So there's 3 different parts to it. The 5-year plan is about ensuring that we're looking at the longer term cost efficiencies, making sure the buildings remain usable and sustainable. But it's not the only thing that we're doing. It's part of a bigger programme.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add to that, yes, clearly work is ongoing. We do have the surveys, and we've used those to undertake the most essential pieces of work. What we're seeking to do is to put together a more planned programme with a budget in place which is costed up on the basis of those surveys. So work is ongoing, and I'll ask Mr Nixon again to come in a minute. What the Civica system will enable us to do is just have much more automated information that we can use in a much more streamlined fashion. We do have manual records. This will help us be much more efficient in the way we use information, but Mr Nixon can come in and add to that.
Adam, do you want to come?
Yeah, no problem. Just to add to that, the surveys that were undertaken in 2021 are in an Excel format. And like I said, we can interpret that information and still plan the maintenance over the next 5 years. With regards to Civica property management, we will be utilising that going forward for condition surveys, because that is part of the function, and it will help with us programming intuitively our maintenance programme going forward. However, because that's going to take a significant amount of time to get all the information in and completely get up and running, it won't hold us back in maintaining our properties, going back to your question, because we still have the information, we understand what the condition is, and we can still plan what we're going to do. In the future, once Civic Property Management is fully utilised, it'll just make the process a lot more slicker and streamlined, as we can use apps that are interlinked and surveys can be undertaken, and information can then be directly uploaded into Civic Property Management as well. So it won't stop us from doing works on our properties. It's just going to it'll be more streamlined and a quicker process in the future.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Can I also welcome Mr Rennie to a first scrutiny meeting? Nice to see you. And can I turn my question to the Cabinet member, please? So, Councillor Belinsky-Gelder, you referred to the 5-year planned maintenance programme in your introduction. Could you tell us what the current status of that programme is, please? And have the costs been incorporated into the Council's financial strategy?
Work is currently underway on the 5-year maintenance programme, and it, like I said in the opening presentation, it'll be factored into the budget for next year.
Councillor Green.
Thank you. Could I refer you to page 21, paragraph 18, Councillor Belinsky-Gelder, and health and safety. So I'm aware that previous audit reports have gone to the Governance Committee, which have raised some significant concerns over fire safety regarding the Council's assets. How confident are we as a Council that these issues have been fully addressed?
So in terms of the operational detail on this, clearly we have several categories of assets, some of which are operational assets, which are the one the council uses, like this asset, and others are the commercial and the rest of the portfolio. So if I may, I'm going to ask Mr Core to comment in respect of the council's operational assets, and then Mr Nixon on the commercial estate.
Hello. So for the operational assets, there's been a lot of work undertaken before I started here regarding fire stoppage and compartmentation. So I'm confident that the operational assets are covered. And we also do additional checks now going forward with the FM team, like monthly checks to make sure each site or each responsible officer is doing the the due diligence. So like weekly fire alarm tests, monthly emergency light drop tests. So yeah.
And Adam?
Yeah, no problem. And just with regards to the commercial estate, statutory compliance is within the lease of tenants to maintain properties. The council mainly maintains the structure and the roof, but within leases around anything around fire safety is on the tenant to ensure that they comply with that. And then they should be providing regular information to the landlord on our request or within timescales within the lease for updated fire risk assessments, etc.
Thank you for that, Adam. I'm just going to bring Councillor Bansky-Geldern and then Councillor Green.
Yeah, I think it's important to say here that the new Civica property management software will, once it's all established and set up, will be able to alert us and highlight any issues like the Legionnaires, the fire alarm, anything that goes out of date, gas testing, electric and things like that. So I think that the things that we're putting into place now will definitely ensure that the health and safety is improved, where the estate has been left and not assessed and the condition surveys haven't been done and the estate hasn't been looked at for a significant amount of time. We're actually getting on top of it now and we're making sure that all the certificates are in place to make sure that the community is safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thanks, Jim. Can I just come back? Was it Mr. Core? Sorry, I didn't catch your name. Are we confident that we are now fully legally compliant then?
Yeah, I'll double check, but I would say we're pretty confident. There'll be some minor aspects like fire doors might slip, but that's just when buildings move. So that's why we have regular fire risk assessments. So, but we look at them they're done every 5 years. So we'll keep on top of it and we'll monitor it.
Could we ask you to double check that and then report back to this committee within a reasonable amount of time, whatever you consider to be reasonable, Mr. Chairman? Obviously, this is an issue of concern.
Yeah, I'm happy for that to come back to the committee for our next meeting, if that's okay, if we can get the detail. Thank you. Councillor Turner. Your microphone, Councillor Turner, sorry.
Councillor Bansky-Geldern, referring to page 22, paragraph 22, reducing rent arrears. What is the current rent arrears rate and what steps do we need to take to recover this income? Thank you.
I don't have that information to hand. It's something that we can inform you of unless an officer present knows that information.
No, I'd have to go and get that information, Councillor.
Mr. Nixon was wanting to speak there.
Yeah, sorry, apologies. It was just I can go. I can find that information and share that with regards to the current arrears. It's a change in it changes each month, so yeah, I'll have to get the current updates position.
Okay, thank you, Adam, and we'd welcome that information as well. Councillor Williams.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. That's going to question about on page 22, paragraph 23, rent reviews. It makes mention that there's 109 outstanding rent reviews. What percentage is that of the overall estate? And what's the maximum amount of time a lease has been overdue for review? And what time scale is there for carrying those out?
I think I couldn't necessarily give you that detail right now, but I would just like to say that we've been through the COVID pandemic and that we've let businesses and things like that maintain what they were already on, just to make sure that they were secure, if you will, financially and things. So that's something that we can definitely get back to you with. I think at the start I said we have 122 assets. Not all of them necessarily require rent, but you can work that out, I suppose. But I will definitely get back to you with further information on that.
Okay, thank you. And, you know, obviously once those rent reviews are complete and we say we expect an uplift in revenue, what do you expect? Have you got an idea of what the uplift may be?
No, I don't know that. There's 10% of the properties are currently being negotiated, and so I think per metre squared on the units that's increased, and so it'll depend on the unit size, on the number of units we've got at that size, and so that isn't information I've got to hand this evening, unless an officer has. Adam might have that.
So just to go back to your point around the rent reviews, quite a few of them are ground rents as well, which have not been looked at for quite some time, which will bring in more revenue in for the council. So we have got members of staff who are solely concentrating on the rent reviews, which you can see from the progress that's being made. And we can, I can safely say once they're all done, there's definitely going to be an uplift of circa £100,000 a year in income. I do think that's probably a bit conservative, but just from the information I've had from one of the surveyors working on this, but we can provide a bit more granular detail on that going forward.
Thank you, Adam. Have we got a time frame of when we think we're confident of ensuring that these are completed? I'm not sure.
I think for you, Chair, it is a rolling process, and as you'll see, one which involves negotiation. So I would think it would be difficult to predict timescales, but if Adam is able to contribute to that, then please do so, Adam.
Yeah, I'd agree with Kim on that. The plan is we've got a temporary resource for 12 months. His plan is to get through all of these if possible. Like I say, it can be difficult with negotiations, so we can keep reporting on progress, but it is difficult to pin down exactly how long it would take to renew all leases and do all the rent reviews, because it is it's cyclical as well, because more will keep coming up as leases end or rent reviews come up as well.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Councillor Cheney, you want to come in?
Please, yes, if you don't mind. Basic question, really. I just wanted to know, how many properties does the authority own that they rent out for residential purposes, please? Thank you.
I don't know if Adam wants to elaborate, but the details that I received, there's 35, and obviously that's with Mackenzie Arms added, and the other different affordable housing that we've recently added to the portfolio.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor King.
Good evening. Please can I take you to page 22, paragraph 24. Councillor Belinsky-Gelder, you've mentioned that the council wants to take a tenant-centred approach. Could you just explain to me what you mean by that?
Yes, so I actually asked the same question to the officers in terms of what the customer experience is going to be for the tenant. And it just means that the officers will be accessible for any support, and that we'll make sure that we're communicating with tenants. We're promoting the properties that we've got and making sure that we foster positive relationships, address tenant concerns, ensure tenant satisfaction whilst contributing to a well-managed estate.
Thank you. And I guess whilst reviewing the rents of 109 different properties, then you've mentioned you want to foster strong relationships with these tenants. How is it that you're planning to achieve that if there's a potential that their rents are going to be increasing at a time when there's a cost of living crisis?
So I think that the leases and things haven't been renewed for such a long time that businesses are expecting their rents to increase. How much is up to them through the negotiations, but it's just as far as I'm concerned, it's a business discussion with a negotiation between the council and the tenant. I don't know if an officer would like to add to that.
I'm happy to jump
I
in
think
there.
Adam will come in,
Yeah.
but in these situations, clearly it's about good communication and explaining any reasons for rental increases, looking at the property with the individual tenant and whether there's any aspects of the service that the tenant feels that needs improving where we are able to do so. But Adam, do you wish to come in?
No, it would, like I say, it was just to reiterate what Aniela said, really, around a lot of it is within the lease. It's a contracted rent review, although it has been missed. So tenants should be aware that there potentially is a rent increase. It depends on the market. There might not be, but like I say, you need to assess it on the market rent at the current time. But yeah, so that's something that they will be aware of. But like I say, it probably hasn't been undertaken when it could have done as stipulated in the lease in the past.
I appreciate that, and I understand it's a business need, business request. Ultimately, with 109 different properties, you're bound to probably get at least one disgruntled tenant. What is the plans in place to ensure that we don't end up with increased unoccupation and keeping rents in?
So I think there's two things. One is the condition survey. So if we make sure that our properties are in good condition, where they feel safe and warm, and that the property is serving their purposes, then that should satisfy their needs. And again, it's just about making sure that the council is eking out as much value as we can from all our assets. And that's partly why I've actually requested a commercial strategy as well, to make sure that we are making the most out of all our assets in every way we can.
Can I just take you to page 22, paragraph 25, looking at management of utilities? Reference is made to members of the team having limited experience in utility management. What's being done to address this?
So I think that point 25 is identifying the issue, but point 27 answers it. So in the last cabinet meeting, I introduced a really detailed report around the utility management, because it takes 3 members of staff all the time to try and read all the meters, if you will. So what we've done is we've procured a managed utility supply contract. The utility management company has bespoke cloud-based software to help large organisations manage complex utility requirements, all of which the council qualifies, because we have over 100 core supplies, over 30 sites, and that isn't something you can easily do. We also, using the utility company, are trying to, on economies of scale, reduce what we're paying for our energy. And also the added benefit is that we can now track and monitor our energy usage a lot more efficiently, and that also ties into our climate change agenda as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor King.
Please can I take you to page 22, paragraph 30? Councillor Belinsky-Gilder, how would you define flexible procurement of commodities contracts?
I think that's more of an operational rather than a political question, so I'll let an officer answer that.
Mr. Nixon will assist there.
Yep. So the term the flexible procurement of commodities is just being advised by the market specialist on whether to go into a 12-month fixed contract at that current time, a 2-year, or potentially going on a variable contract. It's just looking at the flexibility of what the marketplace is saying, being able to assess and forecast what costs are coming up as well. So it's just just being flexible in order to generate the best value for the council. Really, that's the service that they can provide as well.
Thank you for that. Ultimately, all of us want best value for money. This flexible procurement of commodities contracts means that we are literally at the whim of market pressures. When globally we have high inflation, do you accept that we are actually adding risks to the council by buying commodities during market highs and leaving us at the mercy of inflation?
So I think that's the purpose of why we've looked to go for this, is that actually what we and a lot of the public, and to be honest, householders found as the global market significantly shifted, is that people were sometimes caught in long fixed term arrangements, which in some circumstances have been very good and in other ones haven't been, or they've been moving into variable rates at the wrong time. And so the idea behind going into a contract where we get professional advice of somebody who understands as much as people can understand the energy markets, we are then getting advice of whether they think that the market is at a high, and therefore we should be seeking to stick with a variable because it may well come lower, or whether they think it is at a low and therefore we should be looking to fix. And so the idea is to try and make sure that we're actually managing the market rather than just being at risk at whatever time we happen to have to go to the market because our 2-year fixed deal has come to an end, or being caught in a variable deal when actually the market has shifted and we should have fixed. So the idea is to try and actually to recognise the risk is there, and that we don't have the in-house expertise to be able to understand energy markets, and that's what that is meant to be able to do.
Okay, thank you. And will all the energy that we purchase be green and be contributing for net zero?
Adam, I wonder if you can help there.
Yeah, so the plan is for it has to be green energy. That was stipulated within the exercise, the competition exercise, and then, like I say, I think you can see at the end of paragraph 30, looking at procuring potential energy direct from energy generators such as wind and solar farms. So that's the aspiration as well, going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to page 23, paragraph 32, Civica property management, most of the effective management of our assets relies on this software system. How confident are you that we will meet the 18-month timescale, and are there any contingencies? Thank you.
I'm confident that we will. I've asked specifically to be briefed on updates on this Civica and the inputting, the data capture, and to have sight of it as well. So I'm confident that it will be, even if all properties aren't accessible and the modules aren't all available, certain ones will be. So it'll definitely be something that we can use within an 18 months period. The 18 months is for it to be fully up and operational, but I think we'll definitely be able to start using it before then. I don't know if Adam wants to confirm that.
Yeah, so Civica property management is used by a significant amount of local authorities. We have a project manager allocated now. They've worked with authorities that are in a current position that we are in, and they've stipulated with regards to their programme what's required in order to implement this and get all the modules and the system running. So we're basing timescales off their expertise as well. But there's a lot of the modules that we're looking to get up and running a lot quicker than that. The likes of the help desk module, the estates module where we're looking at tracking leases, the compliance module as well, inspection module, and a questionnaire module. So all these modules will be up and running, and just to make the service a lot more smooth and slicker, and help with other items around audits, etc. as well. So 18 months is an achievable goal for everything to be up and running, but there are other items that are definitely going to help the service, which will be operational before then.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I just refer you to page 23, paragraph 33, the performance indicators? It's just not quite clear whether these are actually targets or whether it's actually current performance. So if they are targets, what is the current performance? And also looking at the civic income, about roughly 3,400 quarterly. Are we on target to achieve that? And if we're not, how can we replace that? And how are we looking to boost that?
Yes, thank you through you, Chairman. The figures are targets. In terms of the current performance, I'll ask Mr. Core to start in terms of the civic income and see if Adam wants to add following.
Okay, so we're currently on target with the civic income, but again, we're always wanting to push and advertise as much as possible. We're currently looking at a new booking system to enhance the customer's experience and also attracting, create more bookings. So we're on with that at the moment. We're looking at external off-the-shelf modules, or potentially building one internally with our ICT team.
Thank you very much for that. And also looking at on the same page, paragraph 34 and basically 34 and 35, future strategies and plans. We talk about short, medium term and long term. Can we just tighten up on them a little bit? What did we consider to be short to medium term and long term? Will be 12 to 18 months or 2 to 3 years? Can we just tighten up on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I can provide future dates in an update report in 6 months, if that's what you want.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from members not on committee? I don't think we've got any members of the public here. We haven't got any online, have we? Okay, can we please formulate any recommendations?
Thank you, Chair. Just some of the themes from the discussion this evening that the committee might like to consider as recommendations. The committee thanks the Deputy Leader and Interim Deputy Chief Executive for their detailed and well-presented report and answering questions. The committee is grateful for the offer of an update on assets in 6 months' time to include information on rent arrears, rent reviews and current performance of the services. The committee feels reassured that previous health and safety issues have been addressed and asks that a confirmation of our legal compliance be provided to the next meeting of the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you very much for attending. We appreciate your comments and the report as well. Thank you. Moving on to item 6, the South Ribble Q2 Performance Monitoring Report for 23-24. Can I welcome the Leader of the Council, Councillor Paul Foster, who will present the report, supported by Chris Sinnott, the Chief Executive.
Thanks, Chair. Just give us a second, if you may, to get logged in, if I may. Thanks, Chair. So you have in front of you the position statement of the delivery of the corporate strategy and performance in Q2, which was July to September 2024, Chair. There's 2023. Sorry, yeah. The year ahead of myself here. There's much information that, to summarise, Chair, the performance of the council is still good and strong, and there's no significant areas of concern other than one, which I'm going to come on to in a second. There's much data and information contained within the report, and as usual, what we're wanting to do is take questions as appropriate. So if I may, I'm going to just highlight 3 areas, Chair, that to quickly brief you on. So the first one is, if you go to page 49 of the agenda pack, you'll see an update there on the performance of Gateway. Committee will be aware that the Gateway particularly during and post-pandemic, and the changing over of the telephone and IT systems and the huge demand. We were struggling, but our whole committee is really pleased to see in front of you there, and we did discuss that we provide the significant improvement in performance within Gateway, particularly around the answering of the calls and within the 20-second, 90-second or 5 minutes, as we have published there for you. So that's the first point. The second point, you'll see within the report there's amber on the delivery of the Leyland Town deal. I'm pleased to report to the committee that there'll be a full report coming forward to council in January, I believe it is, where we are finalising the final procurement and with an update on the land acquisitions as well. You'll be aware that there have been some challenges historically, given the rush that we and the timetable we're working to with government to deliver the bid. We've now dealt with those issues, and I'm further pleased to announce to the committee that we had a visit from government civil servants within the last 2 weeks, who gave us an absolute clean bill of health with the work that we're doing here in South Ribble, and they're more than satisfied with the progress that we've made. And the comment back, and which will be reported to Cabinet and Council, is our deliver our town deal is far advanced to many others up and down the country, which hopefully you're pleased to see. So I'm hoping to see that project quickly reverts from amber to green, and we are adamant and we are clear that we can still meet the deadlines that we've agreed with government for the delivery of the town deal in full. And finally, Chair, the issue of homelessness. Now, this is becoming a significant concern, and you recall that we discussed this last time. And more individuals are presenting themselves as homeless. And this isn't just an issue in South Ribble, it is an issue up and down the country. As of today, we have still got 44 people in temporary accommodation, and we are desperately struggling, as most authorities are, to find permanent accommodation for them because the accommodation isn't available. You'll also be aware as a committee that this council has overspent in the region of £750,000, I believe it is, in supporting our homeless communities. I've written, along with over another 100 district council leaders, to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, urging for intervention now. Intervention so we can support these poor people. I came to the Civic Centre at lunchtime, and when you walk in the doors and you see a baby in a pram and 2 big suitcases and tears, it really does draw your attention to the chronic situation that we find ourselves in. This is the only solution through this is government intervention. But as it stands at the moment, the government is not willing to provide any additional funding to support the needs of our local communities. It's something that we look at and discuss most days as an executive. I discuss it with Chris and Jennifer and the team, but we are really quickly running out of solutions here. And we're going to have to look at alternative and other interventions as appropriate, because with the cost of living crisis getting worse and worse, with the mortgage bombshell getting worse and worse, this problem is only going to get worse and worse, Chair. And we need support from the government to help our communities. Other than that, we're ready and willing to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I just thank officers as well for the report. I mean, I know that the Scrutiny Committee has been asking for figures in relation to our customer access. So to see those figures in the report are really welcome. So thank you very much. Moving on straight away to the questions. Councillor Peat.
Your Chair. Yeah, I visited the Gateway myself this week, had very similar experiences. It's heart-wrenching, isn't it? Something positive we are doing though, social prescribing. So I've got a question around that, which I'm really happy to ask, because I think it's an amazing idea in the first place. So what I'd like to ask, to page 33, paragraph 14, Appendix 1 states that 35 people have accessed the social prescribing service. What has the initial feedback been? And whilst it's still early days, are there any examples of what's been achieved so far?
So I'll let the Chief Exec, Chair, answer that question, because he's got the detail with his team. But what's really pleasing for the council is to see the uptake in this service immediately, and it's having the positive impact in, as we say, supporting with the cost of living, the homelessness, and all the other serious issues that our community face. That's exactly why we brought it in, Nikki. But the exact detail, I'll ask the Chief Executive to provide, if that's okay.
So, as we've said, it is really early days. So actually, they did only go live a couple of months ago, and obviously it takes time for any service, and particularly one that is starting entirely from scratch, to get up and running. The example I think I'd probably highlight actually relates to the point that the leader was making in his presentation of the report, which is actually we've been able to make very good use of the social prescribers in supporting households who are in either in temporary accommodation or who are at risk of homelessness. The committee will appreciate people don't just become homeless. They often are homeless with a myriad of other issues going on that have caused them issues in terms of their finances, and potentially it's a job loss, potentially it's relationship breakdown, family breakdown. Sometimes there is substance misuse or mental health issues, or a combination of all of those. Whilst our homelessness team are experts at dealing with housing and accommodation and are able to provide support, the social prescribing team are able to make those links to other services, to things happening out in the community to able to provide that support. So I think that's probably the most obvious early example where actually beyond the help that actually that then provides into the wider public sector in health and social care, it really actually shows there's a benefit to us as a council because it helps us to better deal with our homelessness obligations.
Thank you for that. Also, the appendix does include a target. Again, I understand it's early days, but how are we promoting the service to get the widest reach? To reach people.
So a really good question again. So all the gateway, because that's the first port of call for a number of our customers and our residents is through the gateway. We're tied in, as you know, the Citizens Advice Bureau and the DWP is in the same building as well. The community hubs are heavily involved in this, but also critically the South Whittle and Chorley partnership. And the partnership has key NHS partners in there. It has a lot of doctors, GP surgeries, and other key stakeholders. And so it's what we have here, Nikki, is a very linked up, joint up offer. And so if the gateway staff are critical, though, and that's why when you work there yourself, and the answer might not be within this building, but what we do know is that the staff know with the social prescribers beside them where the answer hopefully is. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Yeah. I also noticed on my visit there, the day where the Citizens Advice Bureau come in is apparently a very popular day. Is the scope to have more days like this with the current staffing arrangements?
Yes, and we've spoken to the Citizens Advice Bureau about this because clearly with the cost of living crisis that the residents up and down the country are facing, then debt and indebtedness and just having no money and is a critical issue for a number of people. And so we are working closely with them and also the credit union as well with the Citizens Advice to do more. And as demand rises, Nikki, I'll ensure that the availability rises as well.
That's great. Thank you. Paragraph 16, page 33, household support fund. So now that we're in winter is coming. What progress has been made in using and allocating the household support fund?
So all the relevant decisions, executive member decisions around that the allocation of that fund have been made, and it is literally just a case of now allocating as people come forward to use it and offer it. But again, through the hubs, through the Citizens Advice, through the social subscribers, they're all aware of what we have available here within the authority as well. And so I can see, unfortunately, quite a quick uptake on what we have to offer. And I wouldn't be surprised if Councillor Tomlinson's become under pressure that we need to increase that budget potentially as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Thanks.
Thank you. On the same page, in the same paragraph, talk about the HAF programme, and then we've seen an increase in terms of the usage of this over the last few years. What are the future plans for the HAF programme, and is funding available to allow this to be delivered in future years?
Good question, Chair. So you remember that the prior to the HAF funding, we had our holiday hunger programme, and what I can tell the committee is we're absolutely still committed to this, and we will be always. Unfortunately, I can't answer the question because the government funding that comes to support the HAF programme, clearly we're reliant upon the Chancellor to keep providing that. And given the constraints and the rather odd priorities that the current government has, I wouldn't be absolutely certain that that will necessarily continue. But if it doesn't, then we'll be looking for further interventions to support the holiday hunger programme with our other teams here in the leisure centres and the sports development team to continue to deliver as much as we possibly can. I hope the government continue to support this. I really do. But regardless of that, we'll still have our other initiatives and additional initiatives, Chair, to make sure that the community is supported as best they can.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Chair. So, page 34, paragraph 20, the Family Wellbeing Centre. We know there is a Q2 report, but what is the current situation, and is the centre on track to be opened in January 2024? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Turner, and congratulations, by the way, on your selection. Yes, the answer is simple. It's yes. It was slightly delayed. If you remember, we were originally working to a December deadline. We've got some more renovation works that we need to undertake to get it to the quality it needs to be. And the target and the current plan is that it will be open in January, yes.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Councillor Foster. Page 36, paragraph 25, it talks about a property and asset development plan. Can you talk us what it is? Because it doesn't appear to be mentioned in any previous report.
You might have been better paid in asking my Councillor Bielinski-Gelder that question. That sits within shared services. And I don't know if you want to give any more detail on that, Chris, but it sits within the shared services, and Chris might be able to give you some more additional information.
So each time we have created a new shared service, we've recognised that just saying this service is now shared doesn't actually get to the end point. And so we have generally done immediate changes quite often to the structure, to people's working arrangements. Obviously, they move from working for one council to working for two councils, and a development plan is also then put in place. Now, for the property and asset development plan, that has been presented in high level to the Shared Service Joint Committee as we went through that process and shared that team. But actually, most of it you've probably have just touched upon with Councillor Bielinski-Gelder, because a lot of it was around creating a shared system that could then be worked on by the team, and also then the people management element of people moving into a shared service. So development and support for people who are moving from working for a single council to two councils.
Also, this question might also have been better in the previous item, but it refers to something that's written here in paragraph 26. The Civic Centre workspace, who's involved in the accommodation working group, and what's their role, and what improvements to the Civic Centre workspace and utilisation of the space we've got in here are being considered at the minute?
So I think one of the first things they're going to do is look at the thermostat so we can turn the heating down a bit when we're at scrutiny meetings. That's one, definitely. So that's an officer-led working group, but it's something that the Cabinet is pushing hard, because there's a great deal of unused space. If you look at efficiencies of buildings, this civic centre is highly inefficient. And so what we're looking at is options of how we can make it more efficient. And that includes maybe reprofiling some of the areas, looking how we can make ourselves better for meetings with a more permanent installation of this type of arrangement. Because one of the things that constantly but building these sets and using the communications that we have and then taking them down and building them and taking them down is actually quite costly. And you'll all be aware of the challenges we've got with this equipment constantly. So we need a more permanent solution, because actually the permanent solution is cheaper as well and better value for money. So the officers are looking at how we might hold meetings, but then if we can hold meetings in different areas within the civic centre as well, it frees up more space. To a previous question someone asked about actually getting more revenue in from the areas that we do have available. One thing is that the civic is exceptionally popular for meetings and events, and we want to make it more popular and bring in more revenue to try and reduce the burden on the council taxpayer. So I'm expecting Chris, who's heading this up, to be bringing a report forward to Cabinet early in the new year, and then that will go, obviously any final decisions on that will go to council.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. Page 36, paragraph 27, shared data and intelligence dashboard. Please could you clarify what is the benefits that this will realise?
So so what we have, and this was through the pandemic, very early doors within the pandemic, when we were trying to highlight and identify the most vulnerable in our communities. And we found out every public agency, for example, so the NHS, South Ribble Borough Council, the Citizens Advice, the Government Benefits Agency, Department of Work and Pensions, all had different contradictory data. And it was a real challenge at times to target and intervene exactly where we needed to do. So one of the things that the Chorley and South Ribble Partnership did, or more or less instantly when it set itself up, one of the main reasons as well for establishing it was to sort the data sets out, because one of the benefits from the pandemic, and there wasn't many, but the data did then improve and agencies started speaking to one another because they had to. And so there's the piece of work there, and it's something that we should bring forward to council for a demonstration, actually, Councillor Turner, is the data's all been brought together now. And so, for example, you can pinpoint Broad Oak, in Pemberton, and it's not just one layer of data there for a community, it's all the relevant data. So whether it be health, whether it be inequalities, whether it be the number of children that are receiving free school meals, gives you all that data that actually helps target where the interventions may be. It then makes decision making that much better. I think through the chair that one of the significant improvements has been through working closer with the NHS, and this data set and the presentation has actually been very much led. I think it's Blackpool. It was some of the NHS colleagues up in Blackpool that have helped us develop it, and I think you'd be quite impressed. And I think as a piece of work, we should demonstrate that to council when it's ready. And it's being used now. It's just not quite finished.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Chair. Is this accessible to councillors so that they can review their areas? Because that would be really useful.
I think because obviously there's a huge GDPR and there are issues that we have with this, but what we can have, I'm absolutely certain this, unless Chris disagrees, is we can provide you with reports you can't get access to the data, if that makes sense, but we can provide you with reports on your ward, and we can give you the different levels and you can tick box exercise, and then we can provide you with the information. That's most certainly we can do that.
Thank you. Councillor Turner. You're up again.
You can give it me for the full constituent. Councillor Foster, you could give it me for the full constituency if you want, because that would help me with my new appointment. That's a joke. Okay, yes, page 37, paragraph 31. Calls answered within 90 seconds. We welcome the improved performance and the number of calls answered within 90 seconds. How has this been achieved, and how likely is the performance to be maintained during our busy time in Q4? Thank you.
On the first thing about your data set, by the way, for the Lib Dem voters in the constituency, we're struggling with that at the moment. But we'll ask them to.
Can I please? Can I just?
Where we are looking, I do apologise, Chair. We are looking to continually improve these figures. The gateway is now almost fully staffed, I do believe, and they're making significant improvements on a weekly basis. Clearly, as demand increases, though, then we've got to keep a close eye on this. But where you're seeing the improvements, Councillor Turner, we want to continue those improvements. And clearly, we're still working behind the scenes on the more digitisation and the online offering that we have. And as that online offering continues to improve, we'll hopefully see that the call numbers come down and down. And then what I would like to see is more of a correlation between the reduction in calls, but then an increase in the online activity as well, because you'd like to see that those two issues are linked. But you know, that's why we report to you, so you can analyse it and challenge it. But we're not there yet, and I'm not going to sit here and say we're there yet. There's still far too many calls that aren't answered within 5 minutes, that aren't answered within 90 seconds. But we're working closely with the team, and as I say, be interesting to see what the next quarterly results look like as well.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I'd just like to, calls answered and things like that is something I've talked about in previous meetings. I'd just like to thank the officers very much for the information on page 49, that extra report. And can I ask that data be included in every sort of Q2, in every quarter monitoring report, not just as a one-off?
Chris, do you want to come in there?
Obviously, it is within the gift of the Scrutiny Committee to request any information that you want. The only thing I would flag from an operational point of view is that the quarterly, and we had this discussion last time and I became a performance geek, but the quarterly performance report is mainly focused on corporate strategy performance with some additional key organisational indicators in. I just flag that there is two risks that go with putting additional information in. One is that you can end up with a report that actually has so much information in it's quite difficult to work through. The second one is that actually it does significantly increase the burden on officers in producing a report, which has to be turned around relatively quickly, because whilst it doesn't feel like it, because we look at this and say, well, that was the end of September, our committees are such that actually we have a very short period of time to get the information in, make sure we've done all our data quality checks and get it into a report format before it needs to be published for the cabinet process and scrutiny process. So I'm more than happy to make sure it's in. I just flagged there is a risk if we ask for it to be in every single report.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, and I think it's welcome that we've got that data before us tonight. I think because of issues that we've had previously, so we do welcome that information. And I think as a committee, I think we'd probably accept Chris's words in terms of not requesting it every meeting, because we do know that officer time is essential. So I think if we agree as a committee that we want to maybe just analyse this maybe over future meetings, but not require it at every meeting. Yes, Councillor Foster.
If it's acceptable, Chair, to your committee, we can undertake to report twice a year. If that in Q2 and Q4, perhaps that would help. Yep, you can.
I think it's a sensible suggestion. I think we welcome that to committee. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Can I take you to paragraph 34 on page 38, please, talking about the South Fibble Skills Factory? And some positive feedback there about what happened at the roadshow, etc. What are the future plans that we have to expand the work of the skills factory even further?
Yes, so the skills factory is in response to feedback that we got when we did the refresh of the economic development strategy, and so this was one of the early stages of it. The plan is to continue to do the work that we do around events and careers events and working with businesses. We're also developing our networks, so actually we've already got very, very good networks into businesses. We also know that places like Runshaw College, and Runshaw College being one of the key apprenticeship providers within the area, also needs very good links into employers. So we're developing that relationship as well. And so what we're trying to do is develop something where we're very active in the market, but we're not trying to compete with other demands on businesses and people who are seeking to develop their skills time. So we're trying to make those links between our business network, our wider public sector network, for example, Rumshaw College, and then make sure that we're filling in where there might potentially be some gaps, or where we can use our convening role of bringing people together, where we've got those networks. And I think that's probably the key area where it will develop.
Can I just add to that, Chair? Sorry, you'll have, because it's relevant, this, and I spoke to Chris about this the other day. You'll have noticed the report, hopefully you did, that South Ribble is second to none anywhere in the United Kingdom in its delivery of green jobs in the future. And there's a gap that we know that due to the economic strategy and the great businesses and the partnerships that we have in South Ribble, we know there's going to be huge demand for green jobs in the next 10 to 20 years. And we therefore need, through our skills factory, working with local businesses, ensure that every one of our young people or our communities get that opportunity with the thousands upon thousands of jobs that will be generated. So that sort of contextualises how we can prioritise where we work with the skills factory. It's the green agenda, isn't it, Chair?
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. And the point that Councillor Foster's made nicely leads me into my follow-up question. There are so many great opportunities for young people in the South Ribble area and beyond. But some of our young people are switched off. So what part can a skills factory play, and what part can we more generally play in actually addressing that, in helping to maximise the opportunities for all young people?
Thanks, Councillor Green. And as you know, it's a challenge. You know, it's a challenge we're taking on, and this very initiative is one of those routes that you take. And sometimes, you know, as we're doing, you don't wait for the young people to come to us. We go to the young people and encourage them to come with us. Even when you look at the work that the Youth Council does, because the Youth Council does have a key critical input here, because we do listen. They tell us what we do wrong, if that's why people aren't engaged, and we listen to them. And I know that Councillor Belinsky-Gelder was telling me the other day, the number of people starting to come through that Youth Council is increasing, and we listen to the ideas that they put forward to us, and then it's down to us as the local authority, our key stakeholders and partners, to go out there and engage with young people. Young people, as we all know, they're not bad. They just need an opportunity, and it's down for us as local authorities to provide them that opportunity. And I'm absolutely convinced they'll grasp it with both hands. And so this initiative that you've got in front of you here, and the likes of the Youth Council and our key engagement with all our schools through the sports development teams and others, that's how we engage with them. And it might not look good for them at the moment, but it'll certainly look better for them in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I can refer you on to page 38, paragraph 35 and paragraph 40, where we talk about the town deal. We talk about the fact that there's been like a drop-in stakeholder session. Yeah, I know there's been some issues with trying to get stuff done, and it's currently rated as amber. I've already given the update that there's something imminent to solve those problems. But obviously, referring to this, as well as us having issues and trying to get ourselves sorted, it's going to be a major upheaval for the people that are already there, existing businesses, existing tenants, existing people that utilise that area for a variety of different things. What sort of things are we doing to mitigate issues to existing people that are in the surrounds of that area?
Thanks, Hayden. We're doing all sorts, and so we are heavily engaged with the key stakeholders. We've also changed strategy slightly on one or two of the deliveries. So I'll give you an example. The original strategy, we were going to demolish some buildings and then rebuild the same building. And in the interim, the tenants would be out of a home for 12 or 18 months. Well, we don't need to do that. We just heavily refurbish the existing buildings that are there. What that does is it keeps the tenants in place while we're working alongside them. But also it then costs us less money to deliver potentially better outcomes, Hayden. And so I'm not going to say too much about what's going to come forward, but what I can tell you is that we've managed to retain the existing scheme and save a significant amount of money as well in its delivery. But actually, by tweaking it slightly as well, we've got better economic outcomes for Leyland and South Ribble. The key issue that we face now, looking at the local businesses, is the market. And we're almost at the point now where we have a contingency plan in place, but to get the market moved temporarily, so we can move in and then start heavily refurbishing the market itself. But the appetite from the local business community is really, really strong for us to do this. Iddens, that's caused a slight delay because that was heavily contaminated with even far more asbestos than we thought was possible. But then you'll see quite quickly that's going to start being dropped, and that will have a huge impact on the skyline, and it gives that impression that we are making the progress that we are stating that we are. And we've got a procurement strategy now that we're slightly tweaking, that we're going to bring back to council, and you'll start seeing as the construction saying, spades in the ground, as you've got next door at Jubilee Gardens, very, very quickly. And so stakeholder engagement has been picked up, Hayden, as key and critical. And as it stands at the moment, we're holding numerous events with the local business community, and this is going to work, and it's going to work well.
That's great to hear. It's one of the most positive things that's happened to Leyland in a long time. And it's great to hear that it's finally happening, and it's in what we're providing is enhanced from what we had before.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Chair. Paragraph 40, paragraph 43. Has there been any slippage in the Jubilee programme's building project? Thank you.
There's been a lot of slippage because it's rained constantly since the day we signed it, which is just, I think, called sod's law, isn't it? The one risk that the council retain is that of the weather. And that's absolutely commercially normal up and down the country. But as it stands at the moment, and the programme board is next week, I believe, or the week after, it's within the next 2 weeks, Angela. But as of 2 weeks ago, there was no delay in the delivery of the scheme next door. There's an awful lot of earthworks undertaken. And it's usual for at this time of a contract, you don't see that much because actually the piling rigs are on site now and they're sinking the deep pile foundations into the ground. And so hopefully in the spring you'll start seeing it coming up out of the ground, so to speak. But no, as of now, there's no delay, and we're confident that if you remember, we did delay the start of the scheme to get it right and absolutely right. And Mark, we have a good team in place delivering it as well.
Thank you. Councillor King.
Please can I take you to page 41, paragraph 50. Every time this committee receives a report on Active Health, we're seeing the numbers of individuals receiving health screenings by Active Health consistently falling. Your target was to deliver 54 screenings and you've achieved 9. So can you explain to me what's gone wrong?
It's going to be the same answer as at the last meeting, Councillor King, and it will be the Chief Exec will deliver it.
So this target was based upon a programme that was being done around health checks that was an Active Lancashire, entirely separate to us, an Active Lancashire project. They approached us and asked us to deliver it on their behalf using our Active Health team, and we have done that. And in previous years, we have performed very well. And as the report sets out, that we've conducted over 200 health screenings, but the funding for this programme that Active Lancashire had received has come to an end, and they are now in the process of winding down the programme. It is one of the issues with time-limited funding, particularly for things like this, which is you might have what is on paper a 1 year, a 2 year, a 3 year programme, but at the beginning you have a period where you are getting things wound up, and then you are winding things down towards the end of it, and that's what's happening here. So I think I said last time that I don't expect this to ever come back on track, because actually the programme, to all intents and purposes, is going to be completed, and what this update says is that actually we we've already delivered what Active Lancashire expected us to deliver as part of the programme, but just because of where the financial year ends, we're now got a very small number in 23-24, which is the financial year we're reporting on.
However, it is a choice to not use money to fund it. If you know a programme's ending, it is a decision not to back that up with further funding. To me, I think health is one of the most important things for the borough. So can you explain to me that why this programme, we knew it was ending, why nothing was planned for to keep something like this going on, or is it just simply not a priority?
No, 13 years of austerity and cuts to local authorities, and we paying £700,000 in additional utility costs because of the state of the economy, Will. And so we have to prioritise where our resources are. With, as the Chief Exec said, we did this in collaboration with Active Lancashire and we carried it out on their behalf. But ultimately, we haven't got resources for absolutely everything. I wish I could sit here and say Councillor Tomlinson is going to announce in the budget that we're going to reintroduce this in the next year. But I can't say that because money is really tight. But health is a priority. It's an absolute priority and it remains a priority. But we can't do everything with such limited resources. And you've got the UK SPF, for example, and that's an area that we could consider to maybe perhaps use for this. But the county council is just about to take that off us with their county combined authority. So the only additional investment that an income that the district council in Lancashire have received in a number of years is just about to be removed by the Conservative County Council's combined authority. So that takes that opportunity away from us. But, let's not beat about the bush. Local authorities, district councils, budgets are struggling and we're having to prioritise. We wish we could do more, but we just can't.
You've blamed in that the UK government and Lancashire County Council, and you've taken zero responsibility of this yourself. You've said yourself that, budgets are tight. We've spoken in previous council meetings of, losing £150,000 on projects in particular areas. It is a choice. You can choose to go and fund this, health, or you do not. So is it a priority?
Well, firstly, Councillor King, we can't do everything. Secondly, this isn't our statutory responsibility to deliver this. And you have the county councillor responsible for health and wellbeing in Lancashire sat to your right. You may wish to ask him this. The reason I blame the government, Councillor King, is because it's the government's fault. The economy is not in the state it's in because of me. It's in the state it's in because of the government. If the government perhaps hadn't spanked billions and billions and billions of pounds in PPE contracts, we may have billions and billion pounds more that we could spend on active health in Lancashire.
I'm just really confused. I'm just confused how now PPE contracts are stopping the leader from being able to fund this programme. It is completely a red herring now, and I'm just wondering, as chair, whether a kind of party political speech is appropriate.
Okay, so what I will say, and I'll remind all people in the room, that there have been a few comments tonight in relation to politics. I think some of them are relevant, absolutely, and I will always interject if I think it crosses the line in terms of politicking, should I say. I think you've asked a question in relation to why this hasn't happened or why the system is being, why this programme is being wound down. I think Councillor Foster has outlined the funding issues that this council and others have gone into. What I don't want to do, Councillor Foster, is go into government decisions around PPE contracts or other things. I get the relevance of that, but I don't think that is helpful for us as a committee or for our residents either. So I will call it there, please. Thank you. Councillor Green.
Yeah, thanks. So first of all, I'm a member of the Active Lancashire board, so just to put that on record, please. But just a follow-up question. I take on I think the party politics is regretful. There's no place for party politics in a scrutiny committee. So I hope we don't see that in future. But can I just ask a specific question? In terms of health, what funding sources has the government made available since COVID, for instance, that could be used to promote health and to fund a programme of this?
We'll write to you and tell you, Councillor Green, but we're hoping you. Sorry. We'll write to you and tell you, but we're hoping you should know in the position as the county council responsible.
I certainly know as a county council, and I know what we are doing as a county council. I want to know what this borough council is doing, Leader.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peat.
Take you to page 42. The number of households in temporary accommodation. How confident are we that the steps outlined here, including the new housing allocations policy, will improve this indicator? And also, I can't see any measure for those that haven't made it into temporary accommodation, because things have changed recently, and I know I'd like to see the number of people coming through the door compared to this as an additional note. Do we have any plans to report on that as well?
So what level of confidence do I have that this is going to improve? 0. I'll be careful how I answer the question, Chair. But as I mentioned earlier, when I introduced this and I spoke to you, the position is becoming chronic, Vicky. What we will do is we'll provide the committee with an update of the number of people that are presenting themselves, and not just this, the number of people in temporary accommodation, but we have a raft of information available and we can share that with the committee.
Just to add, because I can give you some information straight away, I think Councillor Foster is right that it is very difficult for us as we sit here now to predict what the trajectory of this indicator will be. So I can tell the committee that last week, if we'd reported at that point, the number of people, households in temporary accommodation would have actually been on target at 44. This week it is off target because it's at 47. It will fluctuate as we move through the process. I think it would be useful for us to share, as Councillor Foster promises, the number of people, but just by way of an example, in the last week, we have had 10 new presentations. Now, not all of those will we owe a duty to, not all of those will we owe a duty to accommodate to. So as you say, they won't always feed through in that way. The week before we had 17. So again, we are still getting a lot of presentations. We do also need to flag that whilst it isn't happening in significant numbers at the moment, as the government and the Home Office start making decisions in relation to asylum cases that are housed within hotels or other temporary accommodation, which maybe in the borough, maybe out of the borough, we are likely to see an increase in people presenting, because if someone has a decision made, an asylum decision made, and they're able to remain in the country, they don't have a local connection. Their local connection is to any council they wish to present to. And obviously we have people who are housed within accommodation in South Ribble, and we can anticipate that at least a proportion of those will come into our offices to present as homeless. Others will make decisions to move elsewhere in the country based upon family or community ties. But I think it's just a risk to flag that could be something that, even if the numbers come down, they might go up again.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Yeah, it is becoming a concern for all of us, isn't it? We all are genuinely worried about this. Keeping an eye on the numbers and looking at possible solutions. We have major risk to budget, we think, with this area, don't we? Could we do a deeper dive into this, where we perhaps have a task group set, so we're just always keeping an eye on, a close eye on this, and maybe exchange ideas with other councils as well and see how they're managing things. Maybe just really, really try and get a proper insight into where we are.
Yeah, I think, Chair, that'd be a really good idea, because it isn't going to improve quickly. It isn't. And the data and the evidence that we've been provided with is, there's many areas where people, and reasons why people present themselves as homeless, and it is complex for a number of people. But one of the areas is obviously with the mortgage rates, and the evidence that we've been provided with is that full impact hasn't yet hit and won't do until towards the end of next year. But as Chris said as well, the asylum policy as well, we're not fully aware what the status of the Leyland Hotel is. We've not been informed yet. But there's a number of different strands that need pulling together. The fundamental fact is we need to come up with some form of intervention that's sustainable and affordable to support, because, as I said earlier, I think Councillor Tomlinson did report at the last quarterly meeting that there's been an impact to our budget in the region of £700,000. So we need to do something, but we also need to do something for the individuals. That's our responsibility.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I would also agree what Councillor Peter said. I think we're at the point where, as a council, well, either as a scrutiny committee or as a council, we need to focus on this a lot more. I know we've spoken about it in previous meetings, and we'll probably come on to the budgetary risk of it when Councillor Tomlinson presents his report. But we're talking about the money we're spending on statutory things that we must provide. I think we all need to get a handle on the stuff. There's the stuff we must provide, but it's the stuff that we can provide as well. So I'm sure we can provide other services given budget rearrangements or whatever. And it's a risk to the council's budget, and it's a risk to our reputations and our our hearts and minds about helping the most vulnerable in society. That's what this council should be doing. So I would concur with that, and it would be good to get a task group together.
And I think, if I may, Chair, I could offer up Councillor Claire Hunter, whose portfolio this is, that would sit alongside and work with the task group, if that's what you so wish to undertake. But I think it would be a really important initiative. I really do. I'll get a copy sent to all councils of the letter that we've sent to the Chancellor, the District Council Network, because it's some simpler things, but everything costs money. Increasing the local housing allowance, for example, which is one of the housing benefit, may assist in keeping individuals in rented houses for longer, because the disparages as private rents are going up and up. Housing allowance isn't following that. There's also the issue of how universal credit is capped as well, and it doesn't take into so even if as the legislation is currently, even if there was an increase in LHA, that universal credit wouldn't allow it. So you'd be receiving extra income potentially for your housing costs, which would help you stay in your house, but universal credit wouldn't increase as a pot, if that makes sense. So we're hoping the District Council's network, we have put five or 6 points to the Chancellor for consideration in the budget in 10 days' time. As I say, money is important here, but there's also the social prescribers and that facility where we can really try and work harder with the individuals to try and keep them in some form of housing. So there's much to do, but we're more than willing to work with you to do that. Where this isn't, we are open to any ideas on how we can support the community with this.
Thank you. I think a task group looking at this issue, I think because of the risk associated to the council in terms of the financial implications, but also not forgetting the human impact on this as well, I think is really important. So I think if we agree as a committee that we want to set something like that up to do a bit of a deeper dive moving forward, is that something we'd welcome? Okay, and that's something that we'll do. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Chair. This brings to my mind, certainly after chatting to residents in Leyland, that the piece of the jigsaw that, although it's not on the agenda, but I feel it there's some synergy, is that I discovered after trying to give some support to some residents in Leyland that we have 3,000 people in South Ribble on the waiting list for housing. Now, we're talking temporary accommodation here, but I think that is part of the big issue here. It must have an impact on temporary accommodation. And I don't know if it would be, it's something that, well, it sounds critical to me. And I'm wondering whether this should actually be included as a key performance indicator. And this is the reason why earlier on I asked Councillor Valency Gelder how many houses we actually own to rent out to residents, and it's 35. So I know we've got a big issue with social housing, and I don't want to delve into the political nuances of that, but 3,000 people waiting to get accommodation in South Ribble has to have an impact on the same element of issue, which is the temporary accommodation. And should we be scrutinising this to see how Progress Housing is managing this catastrophe really in the borough? Thank you.
So this is multi-layered, Councillor Turner. It really is. Remember, our old council housing stock was handed over to Progress Housing Group, and rather than this committee, if I may, I think possibly this is something that the External Scrutiny Committee could maybe look at. But this is where it's a real struggle, because we've obviously built the first homes, the first 35. We've got another 70. I should know, 75 next door. Is it? Yeah, but that requires investment, real cash investment, and not everyone wishes to support that, but obviously we pushed forward and we did it. There's legislation issues that we have, because as a local authority, we're not allowed by law to have more than 200 properties, believe it or not. So it's going to require a change in law unless there's bold initiatives that we take and deliver it differently. And that's something that the Cabinet will be coming forward with next year for you to look at, because there is different solutions to the provision of houses. But as you said, I completely agree. The fact that there's about 3,500 people waiting for homes within the borough is awful. And that's one of the reasons that we have intervened, to try and build more social properties. But it is really multi-layered and complex. And ultimately, and I promise, Chair, I'm not getting political, I promise you, but I see the solution for this in the government allowing local authorities quickly to build more what we call proper council houses, social housing. But it's going to require a change in legislation to allow us to do that and allow us to use, in different funding streams. I tell you now, Angela, if the government turned around in 2 weeks' time, in 10 days' time in the budget, and let the shackles off and said, get on and do it, we'd do it. And then you've got the added complexities then of planning, though, that we need to work through, and where we'd place those properties. But I totally agree, there's a huge demand that we need to try and work together to deal with.
Chris? Just as a point of clarity, there are 3,000 people who will be on the Select Move system. We do operate across the Select Move partnership, which includes South Ribble, Preston and Chorley, an open register, which means that people who may want to move house and may want to move into social rented accommodation that is available through Select Move, but might not be in need of accommodation immediately, will be on there. So that out of that 3,000, there will be people who are wanting to, but might not be in specific need of accommodation right now. It's just important to make that point. Having said all of that, we still do struggle with the supply of social housing within the borough, and we certainly struggle with the supply for particular types of accommodation, for example, stuff that is suitable for someone who is disabled or large families. So it's just to just provide that clarity, but I actually agree with a lot of the points that have been made.
Thank you. Do you want to come back in?
I'd just like to make one more point as a result of my dialogue with the residents in Leyland. It has a massive impact on mental health as well, which is quite disturbing when you hear the circumstances. And as I said, we're not focusing on this on the committee, this other side of housing, and I feel that perhaps we should be doing, although I know that there's the shortage of social housing as well, and funding and private business need to be involved in that. And also we've got this agent progress housing that I guess we don't really have a lot of control over. But anyway, we've got a massive issue there. Thanks.
Thank you. I think it's important to note as well our thanks to the housing team, who I think do a very sterling job in very difficult circumstances. So if we can please note that and pass that on. Councillor King.
Please can I take your attention to page 43, paragraph 53. According to the numbers that we have here, it says that you've missed your target to collect council tax, and this has fallen by a percentage year on year. Also missed the target to collect business rates, and this has fallen year on year. Can you explain to us what's going on there?
Allowed to answer this because it's a cost of living crisis, so our residents are struggling to pay their council tax, and businesses are struggling on the high street because of the hike in utility costs. And they, Chair, are the two simplest reasons and the two answers that we have. We endeavour to collect as much as we can, as quickly as we can, but individuals and businesses are struggling.
So what's the strategy then from the back of this? There's money that the council will be owed. What is the plan in terms of working with people to be able to not go hungry? Also ensuring that it is fair on other council taxpayers, that everybody is feeding into that pot.
So I draw your attention, Will, and perhaps the officers can send it to you. We've got a fair collection charter that the council has adopted, and that clearly sets out how we go about and deal with arrears of council tax. And if members will realise, the last thing that we want to do is send in bailiffs and add court costs. So the council has a policy, as I say, the Fair Collection Charter, and we can send a copy of that across. But it's a challenge, isn't it? If somebody has a choice to make between feeding the kids or paying the council tax, it's a choice they have to make, isn't it? And I know what I would do.
Chris?
If I can just provide a more technical answer as well, that the percentage of council tax collected, we need to be clear, is off track. I think, if my maths is right, by 0.16%. So whilst it is off track and it's below target, it is a relatively small amount, and actually we would anticipate that we would catch that up as we go through the year, but it'll be something that we continue to monitor. The percentage of business rates is off by slightly more than that, and it's just under a percent below. Now, actually, the business rates base from the business rates collection last year, which is what this target is set on, because we set it on ensuring that we maintain performance or better performance from previous years, was actually unusually high. And so it is a very high target that has been set. And if you look back through the average over previous years, you will see that actually that the last financial year was unusually high in terms of the collection rate. Now, that could be down to a whole raft of different reasons around reliefs or revaluations, but that is part of the explanation as well, notwithstanding the other issues. And actually the team do work very hard to try and make sure that we're on top of making sure we're getting payments where payments are due, but we're also understanding the challenges that people might be facing and working in line with our Fair Collection Charter. But I just make the observation that actually at this point in the year, they're relatively small percentage differences, which will take us off track as they have done here.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I agree. Your numbers absolutely right on that. I think my bigger concern is that it is moving in the wrong direction, and year on year we're seeing changes, and ultimately we don't know what's going to happen in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So it's just trying to build out a bit of a plan of when are we expecting to see revenues, and therefore when are we expected to be able to spend them.
It's an impossible question you're asking, Will, because we're all acutely aware that the inflationary challenges that the community are facing, and we're all acutely aware that the government policy is that we understand it's going to happen this year as well, is increase the threshold for council tax increases, and so it just doesn't, and there's the cost of living, and our communities are struggling. So the reason we have the KPI there that you're referring to is because it highlights to us where the issues are, and we start tracking any trends. But as I said, as the chief exec said earlier as well, there's the fair collection charter, but that clearly shows how we deal with any arrears. But we can't. We haven't got a crystal ball to understand how bad the problem's going to get. I'd love to be able to sit in front of you in a couple of months' time and say it's getting better, but I don't think it will.
Which I guess brings me on to my final question, which is there a plan to improve these KPIs?
But, well, as the chief exec said, they're not exactly that far out currently. And do you mean reduce the KPIs? Yeah, they will continue to look at it. We will continue to look at the issues that we face, and then it's probably halfway through the year. The next report that you receive in February, I think it will be, will give a clearer position where we are at the end of the year. But our priority is not just collecting the council tax, it's supporting our communities who are struggling to pay that council tax as well. So they go hand in hand.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. And in terms of our collection rates, how do they compare with some of the other local authorities? So the likes of Chorley, Ribble Valley, Fylde, Wyre, do we have comparisons that
we will have Councillor Green, and we'll send them to you. I think historically we've always had our rates, our collection rates have been quite good, but we'll share them with you.
Thank you, and they'll be welcomed. That's the end of the questions. You'll be glad to hear from members on the committee. Is there any questions from members not on the committee? No. And we don't have any members of the public. So thank you very much, Councillor Foster, for presenting that and answering our questions. And thank you, Chris, as well. Can we please formulate the recommendations? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes from the discussion tonight that the committee might like to consider as recommendations. The committee thanks the leader and chief executive for their report, including the additional customer access information and answering questions. The committee welcomes the initial feedback on the new social prescribing service. The committee is grateful for the offer of a demonstration of the data and intelligence dashboard. The committee requests that the detailed customer access information be provided to the committee every 6 months. The committee asks that information be provided on the potential funding sources that could be used to continue the health check screening programme. The committee creates a scrutiny task group to look at the temporary accommodation and homelessness challenge. The committee suggests that the community and external scrutiny committee look at how our housing partners are working together to improve housing waiting lists within the borough. The Scrutiny Committee places on record its thanks and appreciation to the housing team for their work on homelessness and other housing challenges, and the Scrutiny Committee asks that the council tax and business rate collection indicators be reviewed for next year. Thank you, Chair.
Do we agree with those recommendations? Councillor Green?
All of them, Mr. Chairman, except the last one. So I don't think we should be looking at realigning what the indicator is. I think we should be aiming to actually achieve what the target is, because those collection rates are vitally important. If we don't collect the council tax and business rates, we can't provide the services that our residents need, particularly our more vulnerable residents.
So, could you just repeat what the recommendation was, please, Darren?
The committee asked that the council tax and business rate collection indicator be reviewed for next year.
So I would read that or interpret that as the fact of we will look at the data in the next report, and obviously given the answers which have been received this evening by the Chief Executive and the leader, we would expect an improvement, hopefully, in those. They give some rationale why they possibly might not improve. But again, that's up to the gift of us as a scrutiny committee to scrutinise the future report, the figures and the data in front of us, and ask the questions accordingly. That's how I would read that recommendation. Does anyone else have any comments on that?
I think, Mr. Chairman, you've actually clarified it. So if there's some reference in there to improvement, I'll be content with it.
The scrutiny, sorry.
Chris, yes.
I just think that actually where Councillor Green, when we were having the discussion, asked for a provision of information around benchmarking to other local authorities, I would suggest that actually, and this, you're going to run out of paper if you're not careful, Darren, but I would suggest that actually the recommendation is that we review our position again, which is a normal way of doing performance management. We look at how we're performing in comparison to others, and we review to ensure that we continue to perform highly in our collection of council tax and business rates. Which would then give us the opportunity to also reflect any issues that might be affecting the whole of local government rather than just a processing issue at South Ribble Borough Council. I do just need to be really clear. The level of performance we've currently got does not give us any cause for concern in terms of our ability to fund services, and it is more complex than that. And if we want to get into that, I'm going home and Neil will come and do a presentation on the collection fund.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think with that detail and the added detail of the results of other neighbouring councils, I think will be really helpful in terms of to measure what our performance is in relation to those. I know that Darren is scribbling something down now. I'm happy to bring you in, Darren, please.
Thank you, Chair. The committee asked that council tax and business rate collection rates are reviewed and compared with other councils, and that we look to continue to improve our already high performance.
Are we happy with those?
Chris said.
Are we happy with those recommendations? Councillor Green.
Almost. It's just that reference to high performance when we are. I accept the point about percentages, but we are below target. So I think a scrutiny recommendation referring to high performance would be somewhat misleading.
Okay, can we take the word high out of this and just put performance? I want to be really clear that we want to see an improvement, and we will obviously we've echoed that. We understand that it's 0.1%. And they're the figures we're playing with. What we want to see as a scrutiny committee is the fact of hopeful we want to see improvement, and I'm sure that the authority share those wishes as well. So I think on that, can we please accept the recommendations? Wonderful, thank you. Okay, moving swiftly on. Item 7. Which is the 2023 capital, is that 2024? Item 7, which is the 2023-2024 capital programme and balance sheet monitoring report. Position as at 30th September 2023. Can I please welcome the Cabinet Member for Finance and Public Protection, Councillor Matthew Tomlinson, who will present this item. I'm supported by Neil Holton, also as Officer Support. I'm not sure if this is your first scrutiny committee, Neil, but it's certainly the first one where I've been chair. So welcome to the committee. And as I say, we'll ask the Cabinet Member to provide an introduction with your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Pleased to be able to bring these two reports for the committee's consideration. And with your permission, I'll probably speak to both reports in my preamble. As you've already said, Louise, our lead finance officer, can't be with us. but we'll be delighted that Neil can join us, and I trust you'll be gentle with him if it comes to any technical questions. I bring the reports with the usual caveats that this is an estimate of how we think things will be at the end of the year with regard to the financial position, should things continue, or indeed with some of these things actually pan out as we are projecting that we might expect. As far as the capital programmes concerned, item 7, there are some changes in the capital programme, almost all of which have been agreed either by Cabinet or Council previously. And mostly they just acknowledge the fact that some of the big projects that we want to do or indeed are already doing, such as Jubilee Gardens next door or the town deal, by the time we actually come to be spending the money, it's not probably going to be in this financial year, it's going to be in next financial year. I think the confidence I would give to the committee is, we're absolutely committed to these jobs. It's not that we're not going to be spending the money, it's just that it won't be in this financial year. So that'll get done next year. I would highlight the fact that in agenda item number 7, there is the table that says once again at the end of the year our debt position will be nil, absolutely nil right across the authority. We'll have no debt. And I was going to say how encouraging our council tax collection rates are, but perhaps in retrospect I'll not mention them at all. There I did it, but never mind. To be honest, I do think to be within 0.16% of last year, when you think what's going on with the cost of living crisis and energy costs, I'm not, I have to be honest with you, I am not as concerned as clearly some members of this committee are, but that's clearly a personal view. When we come on to the revenue monitoring report, item 8, I'm pleased to be able to report that the latest revenue monitoring report is showing a more positive story than the story we brought to this committee at the end of Q1. Members might recall we were then looking at an overspend of over £350,000. I did say at that time this was a projection if things carry on as they are, and I'm glad to say that we are now projecting an overspend of just £59,000, which is hugely encouraging. And I think, in terms of budgeting, when you've got a £16 million budget, if at the end of the year we're £59,000 under or overspent, that's pretty good budgeting. Just a quick whistle stop of how things have changed since the last report. There are a few things to note. Most directors continue to show an overspend in their salaries. That's due to the wage increase that the government has agreed without giving us any money to fund that increase. We budgeted for an increase of 5%. The actual wage increase across the authority comes at somewhere between 6 and 7%. So we'll have to find the difference. I am grateful, very grateful in retrospect to the advice I was given by our finance staff when we were preparing the budget last year, because it was on their advice that we set the budget at 5%. I am aware of local authorities not very far away who set their budget for staff increases at 2%, 3%, and are now having to find the difference between the 2 and 3% that they're budgeted for and the 6 or 7% that it's actually coming out as. So I think on that, whilst it is a budget pressure and there is a gap, it's a much more manageable gap than otherwise might have been. There continues to be pressure with our waste collection service. We spoke about it last time, and I know the Cabinet member is doing a lot of work on that, but it does appear that when we budget next year for our wage collection service, there will have to be extra funding put in there to cover certain things and to make sure that we can manage that. And homelessness. I was going to speak about homelessness again. We're spending 10 times nearly, well, certainly 5, 6, 7 times more than we budgeted for. Our staff are doing a lot of work to try and manage that, working with the housing providers. We've already talked about, being a bit more smarter about who we accept and who we don't. I think that some of that will have a dampening effect on how much we're spending, but we haven't seen that come through yet. But we remain hopeful. But there is no doubt that at the end of the year, we will have overspent the homelessness budget by a significant amount of money. On the positive side, we've had over £200,000 of grant funding that we weren't budgeting for, then that's come through to help, which we're really appreciative of. And we're now projecting £100,000 of extra income through our fleet maintenance service at Moss Side, where we actually maintain our own fleet, but we also maintain Chorley's fleet. And Chorley thankfully sending us a lot more work than we thought we would to help maintain their fleet, which is really, really positive. There's lots more details in the report, as there always is, and I'm happy to take any questions which members may have. And again, as I said at the beginning, if any of your questions are of a technical nature, I will throw Neil to your tender mercies. And at that, over to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tomlinson, and we'll go straight to the questions. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Chair. Throughout the report, the capital programme has been reprofiled. And whilst there are reasons against each scheme, is this something we should be concerned about with regards to our budget process?
I think there's a mixture in there. Obviously, huge proportion of the slippage, it's just around two things. And it's about next door, Jubilee Gardens and the town deal. And I think both of those were referred to by the leader in his report on performance management. And then also there's being honest. You know, I would much rather us reprofile things early. As soon as we know, we thought we might get that done this financial year, but with all best efforts, it's probably not going to happen. I would rather just say that early and get it reprofiled into next year, and then we can all know where we are. So I think there are those things that are in your control that you try and manage as best you can. But I think we have a pretty good track record on that. But certainly none of us would have liked the town deal and the complications that have been in that town deal to have gone on as it has. But does feel very much like we're coming to a point now where pieces of the jigsaw are slotting together. The plus side of that, of course, is if we're not spending the money as quickly as we thought, we've got more money in the bank, earning more interest, helping us to balance the books. So there's a plus and a minus to all of these things.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Tomlinson. I think the last sentence you made, I think we'll probably half answer some of this. Said, what impact does the reprofiling and slippage have on the council's cash flow and treasury management? I think we might have already answered that question, preempted it.
Yeah, and obviously any slippage, especially when you're talking about slippage of £25 million, means you have that money in the bank for longer. And that means our treasury management people are better able to bring in extra income to help support the council tax base, which, as I said, these things are a balance, aren't they? We want to get on and deliver these exciting projects that will be of a benefit to the economy and the residents of the borough. But actually having that money in the bank for a bit longer does mean there's more interest coming in, and that helps us to balance the books. Neil's itching to have his contribution.
Just to comment on that, and it relates to the budget as well. When we're building capital schemes, we do tend to bring them forward in the programme because it's more prudent from the budget setting perspective until we've got a real kind of lifespan of that extra this time we've got from the contractor, a real detailed cash flow of when that spend's really going to happen. That's why we've reprofiled it. Until then, it's more prudent to show it earlier in the programme and build the budgets in there on that basis.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Yeah, page 57, paragraph 21, master plan and regeneration for Penwitham. Can you talk us through the reasons for this reprofiling and apparent delay? And also, I don't understand why the original figure was 2 million. So it's now dropped to 1.902 million. I'd like to know if you've got a forecast date for when the tender will be let for REBA 3, 4, assuming it's the same supplier. But basically, they're the questions.
So it is still 2 million. It's just we're slipping 1.9, so it's reflecting some spend will be in this financial year.
So it is still 2 million in total. It's just 1.9 million we're forecasting to be next financial year, and the remainder will be spent in this year. I think Adam referenced earlier about the bringing forward a paper soon to bring forward the REBA stage 3 and 4.
Yeah, I didn't understand what you said. So we've gone from 2 million to 1.902.
It's still 2 million in total. We're just going to spend 98,000 in this financial year, and are reflecting 1.9 million will be likely be spent from April onwards. So the totality is still £2 million.
Okay, thanks for that. I'll just ask another question. Can you give us a forecast date, if not today, pretty soon, of when the contractor will be appointed to commence REBA 3? And if the same contractor will be doing REBA 4 as well? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's an Adam question, but I'll get that.
Yeah, I think Adam did confirm that he'd do that. So I think if we put that down as one of our recommendations, that'd be great. Thank you. That's it on item 7. I will come to members not on committee once we've finished item 8. I think that's probably the most sensible thing to do. So I will ask the first question, and you have already alluded to it already, Councillor Tomlinson. In terms of the revenue budget report, there are overspends on staffing, and you've already alluded to some of this. Could we have anticipated even more? And is there a way of the significant costs to us as a council in terms of consultants or agency staff that we've alluded to before? Is there a way we're going to get more control of this?
I think when it comes to could we've anticipated this more, I guess we could have just said, well, it was 7% last year, so let's make it 7% this year. But we literally had no idea what the government's offer would be to staff. I think everybody was both pleasantly surprised when the first offer came through, because our staff deserve a wage rise. Local authority wages have fallen behind private sector and inflation for 12, 13 years now. And even a wage rise of between 6 and 7% when inflation's running at a peak of nearly 11% is still a wage cut in real terms. So I think we were pleasantly surprised that offer came. What we were less pleasantly surprised by, that there was no money to help us fund that. So we have to pay the staff the increase, and we don't begrudge them a single penny, but we have to find that within the envelope that we've already got. So we have to make difficult decisions about other things. I think, in retrospect, 5% was prudent, because everybody, many others, including the county council, said 3%, and are now having to find that gap. I suppose you could have said 7% and then would have saved things, but you've got to try and make a balanced view on these things. In terms of taking on, consultants and agency staff, quite often the work a consultant doing is a bespoke piece of work. So it might be a very specialised piece of work. So it doesn't make sense to have someone on the books permanently to do something like the Penwith Master Plan, for instance. So we will hire a consultant. We'll pay someone to do that bespoke piece of work. And as far as agency staff are concerned, sometimes they're just necessary. Increasingly difficult to recruit to local government. We've seen over the last 15 years certain people constantly downgrading the efforts of local government staff. And as I just said, for 10, 12 years now, the wages we pay in local government have fallen behind private sector. But that's the market we have to compete in. If you want a planning expert, we're not just competing with other local authorities, we're competing with private companies and all these people. So it's really difficult. I'm sure if the chief exec was still here, he'd be talking to you about recruitment strategies and how we try and employ people. But sometimes if we can't, and there's important work that needs doing, then we'll need agency staff to fill the gaps.
Thank you. I think the smile on the Chief Executive's face behind you, I think, probably confirms that. Councillor Peat.
First bullet point. Again, we're on temporary accommodation, and we have gone over this quite a bit already tonight. The amount we're spending is worrying in terms of the demand on our services as well, really, as a result of the cost of living crisis and other factors. What more can we do to help the people who are in need of our help in terms of the services we're providing at the moment?
Before I even try and answer that, I will repeat what I've said at previous meetings, that I'm finance, so I keep an eye on the money. But sometimes the actual detailed operational work, questions around that are better aimed at the portfolio holder rather than me. But as I said in my preamble, I am aware we're doing an awful lot of work with our local housing providers, and perhaps looking at Select Move and how that could be made more user-friendly, certainly for homeless people who are at risk of being homeless. The Select Move process is not an easy one to navigate for some people, especially if they come to us with those vulnerabilities we discussed earlier. People don't just become homeless. Homeless people will have possibly mental health issues, substance misuse, domestic violence, family breakdown. And so sitting at a computer and going through what can be a very detailed application process can provide challenges. So I know we're doing some work around how we can make that easier for people who are at risk of homelessness. I think the leader referred to a letter from over 100 district leaders right across political party, right across the country, who are now coming under severe pressure for this. And there was a local authority, and you'll forgive me because the name's just gone out of my head. If we sat here for another 20 minutes, it will pop back up. But there's one local authority now that says it's spending over 25% of its revenue budget, 25% of its revenue budget on homelessness. Now that's simply, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. Housing benefit payments have been shrunk while rents continue to rise. And that means if you rely on housing benefit to pay your rent, you're having to use more and more of your other income to try and pay the rent. The housing market has failed, in my view. I don't mind saying that. I recommend to you a documentary on the iPlayer that's been on over the last month on a Sunday evening about the housing market, where the big providers quite happy to sit on land, quite happy to sit on planning applications that have been passed, because they only want to build 4 and 5 bedroom detached houses because that's where the profit is. And one of the housing providers in their annual report talked about driving up unit price. So they're not, the private companies, they've got responsibility to shareholders. It's not their job to solve the housing market. Their job is to make money, and they're quite overt in that. So someone's got to step into that market. And I think, as the leader said earlier, more and more people are now coming to the view that if the market can't solve our housing crisis, then the public bodies such as councils and government have got to now step in. And I think that's becoming more and more a view. But all these things don't help us in the short term. In the short term, we have an issue to manage, and we've got to try and manage that within the very limited terms of influence that we've got. And there's no getting away from the fact that it's a challenge.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Good evening. If I can take you to page 75 and the final paragraph regarding external grants. And there's reference in there to the risk of some grants needing to be used by the end of the financial year or potentially having to be returned. Do we have a list of what those grants are, and what does it amount to in financial terms?
I'm sure we have a list. I haven't got it to hand, but we'll make sure that members of the committee get that list, including, if you want, if you feel it's appropriate, the dates by which, so what the grant is, what it has to be spent on, and when it has to be spent by. I think that's a perfectly legitimate question.
I think previously a list was taken to council. There was previously a report done, but I'll get the list. We can get that.
Yeah, that would be really helpful if you could, please. And also, what steps is the council putting in place to ensure that we do allocate the funding for the benefit of South Ribble residents rather than being returned?
Nobody likes returning grants to wherever they've come from, but some of them are very, they come with very strict rules. And so it may well be the fact that we can't spend the money because just the demand for it is not here in South Ribble. So I think we just have to be honest about that. Where we've got a grant that we can spend, obviously we'll be encouraging people to get out there and use it for the benefit of the people of South Ribble. But if we do get a grant that actually it's come to us as it's gone to all the other housing authorities or whatever it is, if we can't find a justifiable way of spending it, then it's probably the right thing just to return it, and we'll just be honest about that.
Thank you. Can I just take you to page 76, the first bullet point, which is looking at our waste services. You've alluded to it already in your open remarks. In terms of the increased staffing costs, and I appreciate it's not your portfolio, but could these have been anticipated before we brought the contract in-house, or were they known about before we did so?
I think a big part of this, and I think I referred to it at our last monitoring report, that the information we were given by FCC wasn't complete. One of the things, for instance, they gave us all the cost to run this service, and after they gave us the cost, they gave the staff an increase and didn't tell us they got an increase. So immediately they all came across to us being paid more than we were told they were being paid. So I think, some of this could not have been anticipated. Some of this, quite frankly, is because we're treating the staff better than FCC did. More of these staff are on full-time contracts and are employed by this council, whereas before a lot of the staff were on short-term contracts or agency staff just filling in. And that was something that was always an issue we had with the contract. These mostly men, but there are women. So these men and women performing a really important role. And for many of our residents, and we saw it during the lockdown, for many of our residents, these are the staff that most of our residents see most often. And for them to be driving around on wagons badged up South Ribble Borough Council, I think many of our residents would have been shocked to know that they were on poorer terms and conditions than council staff were. And I'm really pleased to say that now they're on the same terms and conditions as our staff. And if that comes with a slightly higher cost, I think that's a price worth paying.
Thank you. In terms of, is there any learning we can take from this, should this happen again, in terms of bringing a contract back in-house, in terms of due diligence?
There's always learning to do. And I think some of this, the contract was running out, and we were under pressure from FCC as well about whether they wanted us to renew for another, I can't remember whether it's 5 or 7 years. So there was, from recollection, there was some time pressure to the takeover as well. But it would be wrong of me to actually say that is what led to these figures. I just offer that up as some context to what was happening at the time. But we can always, we are a learning council, are we not? And you can always learn from these things.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Can you refer you to page 77, paragraph 21, where it talks about various other overspends and underspends. It says an 89k overspend on Worden Hall due to contractor issues, and it says there's been delays in opening and full operation of it. Can we confirm it's now fully open and 100% sorted and all ready to hold events? And obviously it says that we might not get the income targets be achieved in 23-24. Is anything been done to mitigate that? And as regards the units and everything there, are they all now fully occupied and everything all fully up and running and project closed off?
Okay, I will attempt to reply, saying again, this is not my portfolio, but for the knowledge that I know, certainly the hall itself the offices and the units there are fully occupied, so we should see the rent income increase on there. As we've heard earlier, we have had 2 or 3 events now in the hall, and we've got some bookings in for next year. We always said our long-term aim was for Worden Hall and the units to break even. But that has to be a long-term aim. That's never going to happen in year 1 or year 2. And I think I talked last time about the difficulty of dealing with a grade 2 listed building is things happen. So the drains collapsing that I talked about last time, nobody could have foreseen that. As part of the build, they were inspected and everybody said they were okay. And then some of the infrastructure around this is 200 years old plus. So there will always be issues. But again, after some initial difficulties, for me as the finance portfolio holder, it does feel as though this is beginning to take shape.
Thank you. And Councillor Peat.
Just a quick one, same subject. Do you know if there's any plans for community use yet? You say that there's events being booked. Are any of those sort of hub-funded events or anything that the community are involved in organising?
I think the vision for Worden Hall was always that it would be both a commercial space, so weddings and events like that, but also to have an element of community use in, and also to have those events that would invite the community into different things. So there was a Halloween film showing on Sunday night. There's a couple of Christmas concerts planned. We've now got someone there who is the manager. Now, we haven't had that until recently, so that should help all influence that. So as politicians, we set the vision, this is what we want, and we're now beginning to see the fruits of that vision come forth.
Very much.
Thank you very much. And that's the end of questions. Councillor Turner, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've just got a question on page 86, the COVID Recovery Reserve. It's not the question you think I'm going to ask because I've already got an answer to that from the Finance Department. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand why is the 150,000 not in there for music in the park as a transfer out?
So the 150,000 that came to the last meeting was for next financial year. You mean the one that was approved in the recent report? That was for next financial year that was brought forward.
So I'm just trying to understand. So have you already took the 150,000 for music in the park out of the 296,000?
No, the 150,000 will be taken next year and out of the 280 remaining balance. This is a forecast to the end of March.
Okay, we're in 23, aren't we?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I've got a second question on the COVID Recovery Reserve. So there's a movement there of 16,000. Is that relating to the 16,000 that's been put in the Community Hubs Reserve?
Don't think so, but I'd have to check in terms of the details specifically what it was.
Okay, just one final question then. So with regards to the Community Hub Reserve of 16,000, is that allocated?
Sorry, which was the Community Hub Reserve?
The next to the bottom, under his page 86. 16,000.
Oh, sorry. That's just the remaining balance. None of it's being used at the moment. None of it's proposed to be used in this year. Obviously, the hubs have their own budget in each year, and that's being spent. But this is just a remaining balance that's held.
So this fits out of the commitments you've made. You've put to the hubs.
Yeah.
So it's available, is it, for application?
I think it was carried forward balances from previous years for people. So I think that's predominantly what it's being held for, the carried forward balances.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Have we got any questions from members not on committee? No, and we don't have any members of the public here. Can we please formulate any recommendations?
Thank you, Chair. Just some of the themes from the discussion that the committee might like to recommend. The committee thanks the Cabinet Member and Principal Management Accountant for presenting the report and answering questions. The committee asks for an update on timescales for the next stage of the Penwitham Master Plan. The committee is grateful for the offer of further information being provided on the external funding that's at risk of being returned. The committee looks forward to more detailed information being provided on the COVID recovery reserve. Thank you, Chair.
And we're happy with those recommendations. Wonderful news. I would like to thank Councillor Thomason and Neil for attending and providing us with that information, answering our questions. And I'd like to thank all members who came and attended tonight as well. As I say, the Scrutiny Committee will continue being that critical friend to better support this council in performing for our residents. Thank you very much. Apologies. Yes, members of the committee, we are deferring item 9 till next time. Thank you.